Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. I'm your Bunny Slipper, and today we are going to be covering builds I'm personally bringing into the final shape. That being said, let's hop right into the video. This is going to be all the builds I'm going to be bringing in for the Hunter. Most of these are going to be about DPS and boss fights for the raid, but there is a couple of mixed in here that are about, in general, survivability, and you'll see which ones are hard cut for damage and which ones are hard cut for general survivability stuff that I would use in like campaign, for example, the legendary campaign. So to start it off with, we're going to be using the Star Eater scales with this build. This is going to be on Arc Strider, so it's going to be a very powerful super. This is something that you can bring into the final raid, final shape raid, or the legendary campaign. So we're pairing this with Gambler's Dodge and Combination Blow to try to give us some health back. I always run Triple Jump in PvE, it just feels a lot better. And Pulse Grenade, we have Lethal Current, so this is when you dodge, your melee damage is increased and it'll jolt targets, which is very helpful. It also will blind them, so it helps with survivability. And then we combine it with Flow State, so while you're basically, if you defeat that jolted target that you just made with Lethal Current, then it's going to make you amplified, and while you're amplified and you dodge, you are more resilient, it has an increased charge rate, and your reload speed is increased. So it's just an overall solid, neutral game option. I'm pairing it with Spark Feedback, taking melee damage, increases outgoing melee damage, Spark of Haze, so I have increased resilience, recovery, and mobility while sprinting. Resistance, so while surrounded, I'm more resistant to incoming damage, and recharge, so while critically wounded, the melee and grenade energy it's increased. So that's going to be very beneficial for spamming different things. It's just going to proc in the background, you don't have to think too much about it. I'm a big fan of builds you can turn your brain off to and just use. So for the setup here, I pretty much have it all kitted out for damage. So I have a Siphon mod. Again, Siphon mod on the helmet is going to be the most important here, because they are changing Star Eater scales to make it so you need 2 more orbs. So before, like currently, when I'm recording, it is 4 orbs of power that you need to pick up for the increased damage of the super to be at its max benefit. With the change, it's going to be 6 orbs, so you're really going to want to spec into a Siphon mod on the helmet. And I have slotted on here a heavy-handed. It's going to pair with this energy of Arc Staff really well to generate orbs. You can also run Firepower. You can run both side by side. That way you have just even more orb generation for shorter phases between supers. Again, any resist mod here, but if you're going to be punching a lot of enemies, it's worth throwing on a melee resist, and even a concussive if there's a lot of boomers and stuff like that. And then obviously the Star Eater scale. I run better already as usual, but I have recuperation slotted here, for if you're in higher end content, this pairing right here helps immensely with survivability and high end activities. And then that way you can still slot either a Surge or a Scav, whichever one you prefer, for your DPS rotation. And on the cloak, this is very, very important for this one to have powerful attraction. Again, I have it on all my Warlock builds, and on this one I have a time dilation, but honestly, Reaper is going to do the same thing. I didn't have it slotted there because I was doing damage when I had this set up, so I had a Weapon Surge, or in this case, Whisper of the Worm, and then I just wanted to have the uptime of the Weapon Surge more than I wanted the extra orb. With the changes coming in Final Shape, you're going to want this mod on here. That way you can make even more orbs. Again, this is all about orbs now. Star Eater, you can use it with anything, but I have found the most success with the Arc Strider kit and the Gold Gun kit, which, since they are nerfing the orb generation off of Marksman, I personally recommend using Blade Barrage. It's a very simple switch. You can keep everything else on your build the exact same, and it's still going to pump out a lot of damage. The only thing you have to consider is if you want a healing nade or a damage grenade for the orbs off of Firepower. And then the melee regenerating when you're Radiant is going to be very helpful. So those are the 2 classes I would suggest preparing with Star Eaters. Alright, and moving on to another Arc Hunter kit here. We have it paired with the Liar's Handshake. We have everything the exact same that we had it slotted for Star Eaters that you just saw. The only difference here is the Liar's Handshake. Again, everything about the build is exactly the same. Resist mods everything down to the powerful Traction, Reaper. And then the only difference is Liar's Handshake is going to help you stay alive, so using your arc melee ability or being hit by a melee attack will allow you to follow up with an extremely powerful melee counterpunch that will heal you. So this is going to give even more health, especially if you have Better already active. It's just going to help with the survivability. So this one is more of a legendary campaign or contest mode final shape raid build for just staying alive. And then if you need to, you can just hot swap it real quick, and boom, now you can throw a really powerful arc staff if you build up the orbs. So it comes down to what you want to have. If you want to have survivability over your damage, then definitely run the Liar's Handshake. And the rest of it's pretty straightforward. You're just being a constant punch loop. You can pair it with any sort of weapons you want with this. It's mainly just about punching. 1-2 punch shot is going to be good here, but you can pretty much use anything you want. Like I just have the mountaintop on because it's really helpful. Alright, and moving on to the Void subclasses. This is my personal day one completion build right here. This is what got me through Nezarec on that day one, and it is Gear Falcons with just a standard Night Stalker Deadfall tether. So on the Deadfall we have Marksman, Triple Jump, Snare Bomb, and a Vortex Grenade, and Stylish Executioner. So defeating Weakened, Suppressed, or Volatile grants invisibility, True Sight. After performing a Stylish Execution, your next melee while invisible will weaken a target. I never use that part of it. I mainly just use that first part of getting invisible again. It pairs with Gear Falcons really good. And I use Vanishing Step to, again, help with the invis uptime because it's all about turning invis and coming out of invis for volatile. So the fragments, I have the Weakening Void Grenade. This is going to help pair with Stylish Executioner. So when we get that kill, we're going to go invis as well. Echo of Harvest, so defeating a weakened target will create an Orb of Power and a Void Reach. This is going to pair nicely with Echo of Starvation, so when we pick either of those up, we get Devour with an increased Devour time with Echo of Persistence. So the mods on this one, again, you want to set up for heavy ammo finders, you want to have your ability spam mods on here, so your momentum transfer, impact induction, anything that doesn't necessarily consume armor charges, because I like to have surges. I like to have uptime on those 100% of the time, because in high-end content, you need them to clear the rooms. It's just going to be beneficial for everything. Just trust me on that one. And then for the Gear Falcons, Void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. When you are invisible and defeat a combatant while using a finisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage. You and nearby allies gain a reserve overshield and improved class ability regeneration. These reserves overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. So again, everything about our setup here is going to be about getting this overshields and getting that bonus damage. So it's going to pair with the Surge here. It does stack with the Surge. And then the big weapon that I use is Hollow Denial for Repulsor Brace. You can use this with like DLC's Pulse, I showed on the Warlock. Anything with Repulsor Brace is going to also keep Overshield on you. And since it's a Void Trace, you can just like fan out in front of you while holding down the trigger, just fan a group of enemies, and it's going to hit Volatile on all of them. And then, for example, switch to your Midnight Coup, and then you can just hit all those targets and blow them all up with the Volatile Eruption. So this build literally got me through the day one. Obviously, I didn't have Midnight Coup at that point, but it's really strong. It helps with survivability because things don't shoot at you when you're invis most of the time. So it's really helpful in a lot of situations. And then being able to get invisibility combined with Devour, combined with Overshield, you don't die a whole lot, so it's really strong. And I definitely recommend it because then the tether debuff as well for your boss damage phases it helps immensely. So if you're on the tether duty for the final shape raid, run tether, run this, or the next build I'm about to mention. And that build being Orpheus Rig. This is another really strong void kit. I have a little bit different setup on the fragments here, so still have Deadfall, Marksman Dodge, Triple Jump, Snare Bomb, and Vortex Grenade, and again, Trapper's Ambush on this one, so that way we can go invisible on our Smoke Bomb, and as well we can do the Slam effect and create that Smoke Cloud, because the Smoke Cloud is getting buffed as well in Final Shape. It's worth noting that. So this is really helpful for overall survivability by making everybody invis on a team. If you have a section somewhere where you just need to run through a group of enemies, very helpful to be able to make everybody invis. And finishing step again, just for invisibility to stay alive a little bit longer. It's always just very helpful to be able to dip off of the enemy's radar. For the fragments on this one, we have Echo of Leeching for the melee health generation of the melee kills. And we have Instability, so defeating targets with grenades will grant volatile rounds to the void weapons. And again, we have Starvation, so we can get Devour. And then I have Echo Reprisal, so final blows while surrounded by combatants grant super energy, which pairs beautifully with the Orpheus rigs here. So provides ability energy for each target tethered by Deadfall anchors, and the quiver has an additional shot. I never worry about the quiver. I just do dead shot, so you only have one shot, you get a bunch of energy back, and then when you pair it with that fragment, it's going to give you your super back basically for free. So for this one, I always go 10 Resil just for survivability, and on this one I managed to get 8 Intellect. I don't really care about mobility on these kits. It's a very common theme. I'd rather stay alive with 10 Resil than anything, so I always crutch 10 Resil here. The mods are going to be all the same. Resist mods are going to vary. On this one, the difference I had was Font of Focus, because my grenade energy was suffering on this build. It's only about a 6, so I did slot it in there to help pick up the slack. So a lot of those mods are going to depend on where your stat splits are for your armor. And then, of course, we have the Siphon on, or the Kinetic Siphon. Again, if you're using Hollow Denial, it's depending on whatever your primary weapon is, switch your Kinetic Surge to an Energy Surge, whatever you want to do for like ad clear, if that is what you're using Orpheus Rig for. Typically, if you're using boss damage, I get my tether backs very quickly between damage phases, so I'm never worried about that. But if you are, you can just run Orpheus Rig, save your tether for the boss, and then you'll get a bunch of energy back between that phase and the next damage phase. Alright, now for the next Hunter build, we're switching over to Solar. And for this one, we're going to be using Marksman Gold Gun. We're using Celestial Goldie. I run Marksman Dodge, Strafe Jump on this one, Knife Trick, and a Healing Grenade. This is just because I like to be able to, if I'm in a damage phase where we're a tight group, to just be able to pop my jump one time and be above everybody else to shoot my Goldie, so you don't accidentally hit somebody in the back. If not, Triple Jump is the go-to because it's the best jump for PvE. And we have Knock 'em Down, so it enhances the Solar Super. So I have, with Marksman, it has an increased duration, so I don't have to worry about it running out as much if I need time to set up my shot. And then also, while Radiant, your final blows with your quick throwing knife will refund it. So that's a full refund on a melee kill with Knife Trick. So it pairs really nicely with some of our fragments. And then on your mark, so precision final blows will increase the handling and reload speed of our weapons, stacks 3 times, or you can dodge once and it's going to give you the max stacks. So it's very strong for just that behind the scenes buff that you're going to be getting the whole time. For the fragments, I have Ember of Wonder, so that rapidly defeating multiple targets with ignitions. So again, that's if you're pairing it with something like Sunshot this season, you're getting a lot of ignitions. I only use this one mainly for the plus 10 resilience to help me get there. I have Ember of Mercy, again, plus 10 resilience, but you get restoration off Fire Sprite, which is really big for survivability. And again, I have a plus for discipline here, I have a plus for recovery here, And so I took the minus on the 10 discipline to make ourselves radiant to get our knife back, to get that refund back. Most of these are just for the benefit of the stat rather than actual functionality, so it's something to keep in mind. You can play with these if you want. You might have better builds than I do with your armors. I just have really bad armor for this build, but the big pairing is Celestial Gold Gun here. So as long as you have Nighthawk and you have really high resilience, you can use this in any activity. Everything's just going to be about staying alive, using a super for big damage in boss phases. If you're just trying to stay alive in a legendary campaign, I would not recommend using this helmet. This is only good for taking out those big targets, those champs, you know, mini bosses in the campaign, whatever you are struggling to kill. This is the recommendation. The swap I would keep in mind is you can swap Assassin's Cowl with this helmet very quickly and very easily, which is what I used on day 1. Pantheon. So you have Assassin's Cowl, and so your powered melee kills and finishers will grant visibility and healing, and with the knife, you're also going to get it refunded, so you can pretty much chain this infinitely, and it helps keep you alive, and that way when you hit damage phase, you just have to remember to switch back to Celestial Nighthawk, and it will buff your gold gun, so you can pick up a lot more damage, but still have really strong survivability. So for now, while the exotic swapping meta is still in play, I would recommend running Assassin's Cowl, and then swapping to Celestial Gold Gun, but keeping in mind that Celestial Gold Gun is going to be your big ticket item for damage. If I'm just trying to survive, I might not even run this kit at all. But because it pairs nicely with high damage, I have the Assassin's Cowl to help pick up the slack on the survivability that Celestial Gold Gun doesn't offer. Alright, next up here we have our Strand Hunter, which this one is a little bit trickier because it comes down to more subjective choices. I, for example, like to run the Ensnaring Slam so I can suspend champions and any big target that's close to me. And so it just helps keeping stuff immobile while I either run away or get the kill on the enemy. And then I pair it with the Whirling Maelstrom, so that way I can have the Beyblade of strand damage, which is just really good for solid crowd control. But to start it off, Marksman, Triple Jump, we have Threaded Spike for this one, so it's going to sever targets. And I use the Grapple. You can use any grenade you want. I just like it for that little bit of extra mobility, and it's just really handy with the Grapple melee as well. Being able to do more damage than, for example, what a Shackle grenade will provide, because I already have the bases covered with suspending. If you want to go into all of one thing, you could use Shackle and just use the Ensnaring Slam and have a lot more suspending capability, but I like having a little bit of versatility. And for the fragments, we have Thread of Warding, we get Woven Mail, we have Threaded Mind, so defeating a suspended target will grant us class ability energy, so that's going to synergize with the air dodge. And then Thread of Generation, dealing damage will give us more grenade energy, which is always useful. Thread of Transmutation, so while we have Woven Mail, our weapon final blows are going to create a tangle. That one's really nice because, again, when we pick up an Orb of Power and get Woven Mail, we now have an additional way to make a tangle to then feed into Whirling Maelstrom and create the Tangle Beyblades and unravel enemies. So that's our synergy on the actual aspect. So for 6 Coyote, it grants an additional dodge charge. So that means we have 2 air dodges we can have. So it helps feed the loop a lot, and that way I can spec into, again, resilience. I know it's a very common theme with these, is that I run 10 resilience for survivability, because I'm a personal fan of running stuff on legendary. I like to run it on the hardest difficulties possible, and really just focus on staying alive. And then moving on, so all the other mods, again, they're going to be pretty much the exact same. I have it set up so that I have all these different ability generation mods on my gauntlets. And then I, again, have Powerful Attraction, and Reaper for this one, because this will also proc with the suspend dodge. So if you suspend a target and then kill them, it's going to proc Reaper, as well as get you the increased class ability energy off of our fragments that we just saw. And then when we do that, it's also going to activate powerful attraction and give us any orbs on the ground. So again, we have a lot of synergy with our dodge here, where in this case it's an air dive. You can still use the dodge like normal. It's worth noting as well, you don't have to use your air dodge every single time. If you want just a nice standard reload, go for it, reload your weapon, and you're still doing just fine. This is just to help a little bit more with the air dodge, so that way you can suspend targets, keep them in the air. This is what I would call my champion setup for Strand. That way all I have to do is do a dodge, suspends them, it will stun anti-barriers, and it will stun unstoppables. It does not stun overloads, which is something to point out here. If you are running this for like a Lost Sector build, or something of that nature where you have a lot more champs to deal with, the Ensnaring Slam will not stun overloads, at least in its current state. They might make a change later, but right now it's not stunning, so you still need an overload mod, but it will take care of unstops and anti-barriers as long as you get the kill while they're suspended. Alright, now hopping over to our very last hunter build I will be covering. It's going to be the Triton Vice, our beautiful baby that had some of the coolest functionality for a glaive. Didn't get some love for the longest time, but is finally going to get some love going into final shape. So with that in mind, we have created this build for this in particular. So we're going to be using the Revenant Hunter, Marksman Dodge, Triple Jump, Withering Blade. I use Dusk Field with Touch of Winter for the increased area of effect for the Stasis Dusk Field Maiden, and then Grim Harvest, so that defeating them while they're in that crystal is going to create stasis shards and will give us more melee energy. And then going into the fragments, we have Torment, we have Whisper of Shards, so shattering the crystal in the middle is going to give us more energy. Whisper of Endurance, so our slows will last longer with that grenade, and our melees as well. Whisper of Conduction to make them track to us, and Whisper of Rhyme. Now, taking into account all the changes that they've made, most of my kits for this are set up for what is useful right now. In final shape, these will change to whatever you want to with the Frost Armor change. For example, it's no longer going to be an Overshield, it's going to be Frost Armor. The wording is changing, but the functionality is mostly going to be the same. So these might change a little bit, but for the most part, this is what I'm going to be running to a T with the Triton Vice. Because again, the Triton Vice has increased glaive reload and melee damage when surrounded, and with the buff it's going to last 5 seconds, just like Synthocept, rather than it being a constant check on if you're surrounded, and as soon as that enemy's dead, you lose the buff. Now it's going to linger and have a lingering effect, which it didn't before. And then glaive projectiles, final blows, are going to detonate if the glaive's damage matches the subclass. This is the part that's getting changed as well. So it's now going to be glaive projectile final blows will just detonate with the glaive's damage element. So that means if we have the unexpected resurgence adept arc glaive, it's going to do an arc explosion no matter what subclass we use. We can use this with anything, and it's going to be the same thing. I just think the pairing with Revenant and having the ability to put down a stasis grenade that slows the enemy is going to help your survivability, because it's going to stop them in their tracks and allow you to kill them very quickly, because it will shatter them. All of the mods here are just going to be spec'd into the grenade. I have most of these empty because it doesn't really matter. Again, most of these are subjective to whatever you want to use. The only thing I'd recommend is pairing whatever your glaive of choice is, pairing that with surges and siphons that will help build into each other. So if this is arc, I want to make sure I have an arc siphon mod on the helmet, as well as a surge mod right here on my boots. Same with having a scab. You want to make sure that you pair it as much as you can with the glaive. I already had a lot of fun with this when I was practicing and just kind of testing it out, seeing how the synergies work. This felt fantastic now, so it's going to feel even better come final shape, and it's definitely what I'm going to be trying to run in the Legendary campaign. As always, thank you for tuning in and making it this far, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. And if you like, I'll kiss you.